Hello again, this is Graham. In this video we're going to explore some of the aspects of Sigmund Freud's theory of the mind, what can go wrong with the mind, and how we try to help people who are suffering from problems that are caused by it. Sigmund Freud was born in Czechoslovakia in 1856, but his family moved to Vienna in Austria when he was 4, and he remained there for most of his life, heading to London in 1939 to escape from the Nazis. His family dynamics were complex. His father, Jakob, married 3 times. With his first wife, he had 2 sons, Emmanuel and Philip. I don't believe that there were any children from the second marriage, but Freud's mother, Amalia, who was 20 years younger than his father, had 8 children, of whom Sigmund was the first. As an infant, he built a strong relationship with his eldest stepbrother's son, John. However, they were separated when Emmanuel and Philip moved to Manchester when Freud was around about 3.5 to 4 years of age. At 17, Freud enrolled at the University of Vienna. At 22, he began research with a Professor Ernst Brücke, and together for 6 years they conducted seminal research into the physiology of the brains of humans and other vertebrates. It was this work that led to the discovery of neurons in the 1890s, and in many ways he contributed to the foundation of neuroscience, which is so important today. Along the way, he graduated in medicine in 1881, at the age of 25. Clearly, he was already seen as a specialist in brain medicine, and he focused on psychiatry. He wrote a significant paper in 1884 on the use of cocaine in palliative care, and a book on the loss of language in people who suffer from brain damage in 1891. He'd started his private practice specialising in nervous disorders in the mid-1880s, and he married Martha, with whom he had 6 children, around the same time. I said that his family dynamics were complex. In 1896, 10 years after they were married, Martha's sister Minna moved in with them. And it's the precise nature of this relationship between all 3 of them that is frequently debated. Professionally, a significant turning point in Freud's career was in the months just before he married Martha. He went to Paris to spend 3 months studying hypnosis under a very highly regarded psychiatrist, Jean-Martin Charcot. In his practice, Freud soon began to get referrals of people, predominantly women, who had physical symptoms of mental ill health, but for whom there was no obvious organic cause. For example, fainting, pains in the chest, melancholy, nervous tics, speech impediments, selective mutism, and so on. He adopted the term hysteria as a collective noun to describe these, and as the patients couldn't say how they arose, he said that they must originate from the unconscious mind. The challenge was how to find out what was going on in this space, the unconscious. Over a period of time, by documenting individual case histories, Freud established a handful of techniques that could be used by the practitioner, the patient, or the 2 together to tap into the unconscious. Essentially, he brought these techniques into the field of treatment of neurosis. They included hypnosis itself, free association, where the person who was under therapy could just say anything that came to their mind, slips of the tongue, dream interpretation, and the act of talking together, the talking cure. Freud was very strong on the idea of analysis, interpreting these things, and self-analysis, getting the patient or the client to analyse them for themselves. And he documented his work comprehensively in individual case studies. At the same time as looking at what was going on for his clients, he was also documenting the process of therapy itself, not just the details of the practice, but what goes on within it. And he named 3 processes in particular: projection, transference, and countertransference. In order to understand how the mind works, he proposed a three-part model. The ego is our reality. The id is the part of the mind that is constantly seeking pleasure, responding to two drives, sexual and aggressive. The superego tries to act as the moral police, largely drawing on codes of behaviour that we have introjected from our primary caregivers as children. Between each of the three parts, the id, the ego and the superego, there is conflict and tension, and it is this that seeps out through aspects of our personality, our neuroses, our anxieties, and our ego defensive behaviour. So quickly, let's acknowledge the enduring distinction that Freud was effectively responsible for between two main categories of mental disorder: the neuroses and the psychoses. Neurosis as a term isn't used in the United States any longer, but it is throughout the rest of the world. These are conditions that involve chronic distress and impaired quality of life, yet have no physical cause and don't involve delusions or hallucinations. Psychoses, on the other hand, are conditions where the patient has difficulty distinguishing between reality and non-reality. Today, practitioners strongly influenced by Freud's ideas work in one of two main ways: psychoanalysis, which is highly intense, typically involving 2 to 3 times per week with your therapist, long duration, usually lasting more than 2 years, and only conducted by a recognised psychoanalyst who will have been in analysis themselves. And it usually uses the couch. Psychodynamic counselling, on the other hand, is less intense, usually takes place once a week, is of medium-long duration, anything from 10 weeks to 2 and a bit years, is also carried out by a trained counsellor or psychotherapist who will have experienced it themselves, and doesn't involve couches but usually involves chairs. In the next part, we shall look at one of Freud's further sets of ideas, the psychosexual stages of development, and an area that he and his daughter Anna worked on together, the ego defences. Thank you.